Welcome to English Stories Journey. Listen, relax, and grow your English with every story. The waterfall was louder than the voices of the children playing nearby. Its roar filled the valley like a heartbeat, strong and endless. The girl stood on a rock, her dark hair dancing in the wind, her bare feet wet from the mist. She loved this place. For her, the waterfall was more than water. It was a secret friend, always waiting, always alive. That summer, the village had visitors from the city. A family had come to stay for a few weeks, escaping the heat of the crowded streets. Among them was a boy, about 10 years old, dressed in clean clothes that looked too fine for the forest. His name was Daniel. He had never seen such a powerful waterfall before. The first time he walked close, he stopped, his eyes wide, his mouth open. The girl laughed. "Are you afraid?" she asked. "No," he answered quickly, though his hands were shaking. It's so big." She smiled, proud of her home. "It's the biggest in the valley. I come here almost every day." Daniel looked at her as if she were part of the place, wild, free, untouchable. Her name was Elena. She knew how to run along the rocks, how to climb trees, how to whistle and make birds answer. To him, she seemed like a creature from a story. At first, they were shy. He followed her carefully, afraid to fall, while she showed him hidden paths and secret corners of the forest. Soon, the shyness disappeared. They talked about everything: her school in the village, his life in the city, the games they played, the dreams they had. Days passed quickly. They built a small fort near the water with sticks and stones. They shared berries and told each other scary stories in the evenings. Every day ended at the waterfall, with the sun turning the water golden as it fell. But summers do not last forever. On the last day before Daniel's family returned to the city, the children stood together by the waterfall. Neither wanted to speak about goodbye, but the silence felt heavy. Elena picked up a flat stone and threw it into the river. She said, "You will forget me." Daniel frowned. "No, I won't." She insisted. "You will. People from the city always forget." He shook his head hard. "Then let's make a promise. If we both remember, we will come back here when we are older, when we are 18, maybe." Elena's eyes shone. "Yes, when we are 18. They stood close, the mist wetting their faces, and repeated the promise together. "We will meet here again when we are grown." To seal it, they carved their initials into a smooth rock near the water. E+D. The letters were small and uneven, but to them it looked like magic. When Daniel left the next morning, Elena ran to the waterfall and whispered into the roar, "He will come back. He promised." And far away, in the noisy city, Daniel thought of the sound of the water and of the wild girl with bright eyes. He held the memory like a treasure, not knowing how heavy time can be. The first year after that magical summer, Daniel and Elena wrote letters to each other. At first, the letters were full of excitement. Daniel described the noise of the city, the trams, the markets, the tall buildings where the sun disappeared behind stone and glass. Elena answered with stories of the forest, of the waterfall glowing in the evening light, of her little brothers chasing butterflies through the fields. Their words crossed the miles like tiny bridges. Daniel's handwriting was careful and neat, written on white paper. Elena's letters were full of uneven lines, sometimes with small flowers pressed between the pages. Reading them felt like opening windows into each other's worlds. But time has a way of stealing things. Daniel grew busier as he entered secondary school. His parents expected great things. "Study hard," his father said. "You must prepare for university. Our family depends on your success." There were tutors, exams, long nights bent over books. At first, he still found time to write, but the letters became shorter, less frequent. Elena never complained. She continued to send him her news, though often she received no answer for weeks, sometimes months. She told him about the harvest, about storms that shook the valley, about the first snow covering the roofs of her village. She always ended her letters with the same words: "I hope you still remember the promise." By the time they were 15, Daniel's letters had almost stopped. He still thought of Elena, but life in the city pushed him forward like a fast river. Friends, school competitions, family expectations, everything pulled him away. When he opened his drawer and saw her old letters tied with a ribbon, a sharp ache filled his chest. Yet, he told himself, "I will write tomorrow." Too often, tomorrow never came. Elena, meanwhile, grew stronger in the village. She worked with her family, carrying water, gathering firewood, helping her mother bake bread. Her hands grew rough, her arms brown from the sun. Sometimes the other girls in the village teased her for waiting for a boy from the city. "He won't come back," they whispered. "He belongs to another world." But Elena refused to believe them. Every year, on the day of their promise, she walked to the waterfall. She touched the rock where their initials were carved, E+D. Though the letters were slowly fading, she traced them with her fingers, whispering, "He will remember. He must." In the city, Daniel's world became louder, brighter, but also lonelier. His parents introduced him to the children of their friends, polished and polite, dressed in fine clothes. He smiled, but his thoughts drifted elsewhere. Sometimes at night, when he closed his eyes, he could almost hear the roar of the waterfall and see a wild-haired girl laughing as she climbed the rocks. The memory was sharp, almost painful. Still, he never returned to the village. His parents were too busy, and later he was too occupied with exams. 1 year turned into 2, then 3. The distance grew like a wall between them. And yet, the promise did not die. For Elena, the waterfall became a sacred place. Whenever she felt lonely, she went there and spoke to it, as if the water could carry her voice to the city. She imagined Daniel standing in the same mist, remembering her. For Daniel, the memory of Elena was like a hidden light. He rarely spoke of her, not even to his closest friends. But sometimes, when he felt lost in the noise of the city, he held on to that summer day when 2 children promised to meet again. Years passed, carrying them in different directions. Elena stayed close to the earth. Daniel climbed toward the future. They were like 2 rivers running apart, but somewhere deep inside, both carried the same question: will we ever meet again? And both hearts whispered the same quiet answer: yes, at the waterfall. The valley was the same, but the boy who returned to it was no longer a child. Daniel stepped carefully along the forest path, carrying only a small bag. He had traveled for hours from the city, but his heart beat faster now than during the whole journey. Every sound of birds, every smell of pine needles reminded him of summers long ago. He was 18 at last, the age they had promised. For many years, he had wondered if Elena still remembered. He told himself it was foolish. People change, promises fade. Yet something inside him, stubborn and quiet, pushed him to come back. Even if she has forgotten, I will know I tried. The waterfall roared in the distance. His steps quickened. Elena was already there. She had arrived before sunrise, her breath turning to mist in the cold morning air. She had braided her hair, though a few dark strands still danced free in the wind. Her dress was simple, the color of the forest, but it suited her perfectly. She no longer looked like the barefoot girl who had once run along the rocks. Now, at 18, she was tall, graceful, her features soft yet strong. The years of work in the fields had given her strength, but not taken her beauty. Instead, they had shaped it. Her skin carried the glow of the sun, her eyes shone like dark water, and when she smiled, it was as if the whole valley brightened. Still, as the hours passed and no one appeared, a shadow of doubt grew in her heart. Maybe he forgot. Maybe he never really meant it. She touched the rock where their initials were carved, almost erased by rain. "You will come, Daniel. You promised." When Daniel finally stepped into the clearing, Elena gasped. At first, she did not recognize him. He was taller now, broad-shouldered, his hair shorter, his clothes those of a young man from the city. He carried himself with quiet confidence, though there was also nervousness in his eyes. He stopped when he saw her. For a moment, he thought he had met a stranger. The wild girl of his memory had vanished, replaced by a young woman of striking beauty. Her face was older, but her eyes, the same eyes that once laughed at him by the river, stole his breath. "Elena?" he said, almost in disbelief. She turned quickly, her heart racing. His voice carried across the mist like an echo from the past. And then she saw it, the same smile, the same light in his eyes. Different, yet the same. "Daniel?" she whispered. For a long moment they only looked at each other, unsure how to cross the years between them. The waterfall thundered behind, as if reminding them of their promise. "You came," Elena finally said, her voice trembling. "I had to. I couldn't forget." At first, their conversation was careful, like two travelers meeting on a bridge that felt too narrow. They spoke about small things, his studies in the city, her life in the village, but slowly the walls of time began to fall. "Do you remember the fort we built?" Elena asked, laughing softly. "With sticks and stones?" Daniel smiled. "Of course, it fell apart after one storm." "And the berries? You made me eat the sour ones." They both laughed, and suddenly it was as if no years had passed. The laughter was the same, the way their eyes met was the same. They walked together along the rocks, the mist touching their faces. Daniel looked at her often, unable to hide his amazement. The little girl who once threw stones into the river was gone. In her place stood a young woman of striking beauty. Her face was older, but her eyes, the same eyes that once laughed at him by the river, stole his breath. "You've changed," he said at last. "So have you." "No," he shook his head. You've become—" He stopped, embarrassed. Elena tilted her head, teasing him. "What, taller? Stronger?" "Beautiful," he said quietly. The word felt heavy, true. A soft blush warmed her cheeks. She turned her face toward the waterfall so he would not see her smile. The day passed quickly. They sat near the water, sharing memories, dreams, and fears. Daniel told her about his parents' plans for him, the pressure to succeed, the loneliness in the city. Elena spoke of her family, the endless work, the silence of nights in the valley. And through every word, every look, something new was born, something deeper than friendship, more powerful than memory. When the sun began to set, painting the waterfall gold, Daniel reached out and touched her hand. She did not pull away. "Elena," he said softly, "this place has waited for us. I think my heart has too." She looked at him, her dark eyes shining in the fading light. Then let's not waste the chance we were given. The roar of the waterfall filled the air, but for them, the world felt suddenly quiet, as if time itself had stopped to listen. That night, under the stars, the waterfall once again became their secret place. The promise of two children had become the beginning of something greater. Love, fragile yet powerful, ready to bloom. Neither of them knew what challenges waited, but in that moment, by the rushing water, they believed in forever. For several weeks after their reunion, Daniel and Elena met by the waterfall whenever they could. The valley was green and alive with summer. They walked along the river, climbed the rocks, and sat for hours speaking about everything they had missed during the long years apart. The promise that had once been only words carved in stone was now real, alive in their hearts. And though neither of them said it at first, they both knew. This was no longer just friendship. This was love. Daniel was amazed each time he looked at Elena. Her beauty was not the fragile beauty of city girls, painted with powders and perfumes. Hers was stronger, brighter, born from the sun, the earth, the water. Her laughter was honest, her eyes full of fire. With her, he felt free, as if he had finally stepped out of the noise and weight of the city into a world that truly belonged to him. Elena, too, was filled with wonder. Daniel had grown into a confident young man, his words thoughtful, his gaze gentle. He spoke of books, of music, of dreams beyond the valley. When he was near, she forgot her tiredness, forgot the heavy work waiting at home. He made her feel seen, as if she were more than just another village girl. But love rarely lives without trials. One evening, as they sat by the water, Daniel's voice grew quiet. "Elena, there is something I must tell you. My parents, they would never approve of this." Her smile faded. "Because I am from the village?" He nodded slowly. "They expect me to marry someone from the city, someone with money, connections. They have already spoken of it." Elena's heart tightened, but she forced herself to stay calm. "And what do you want?" Daniel turned toward her, his eyes burning with truth. "I want you. I don't care about their plans, I don't care about their world, but it won't be easy." Elena looked at the rushing water. She had always known the city was far, not only in distance, but in life itself. "My family would not understand either," she admitted. "They need me here. I help with everything. They would laugh if I said I wanted to leave, to follow a boy from the city." A silence stretched between them. The waterfall roared, as if to remind them that promises were not enough to fight against the world. In the following days, their love was tested again and again. Daniel's parents sent letters, demanding that he return quickly to prepare for university. They reminded him of his duty, of the sacrifices they had made for him. Elena's parents began to notice her absences. "You are dreaming too much," her mother said sharply. "There is no future in such thoughts. You belong here, with your family." The pressure pressed down on both of them, heavy as stone. One afternoon, when the sky was heavy with clouds, Daniel met Elena at the waterfall. His face was pale, his voice tight. "They want me to leave tomorrow," he said. "So soon?" Her voice broke. "They say it is for my future, that I must not waste time." He looked at her desperately. "Elena, come with me. Leave this place. We can build a life together." Her eyes widened. "Leave my family? Leave everything?" "Daniel, I cannot. They need me. Without me, they will suffer." "But what about us?" he demanded. Her lips trembled. "What if your parents are right? What if we are too different?" His anger flared. "Different? After everything we've shared, after all these years, you say we are too different?" Tears filled her eyes. "I love you, Daniel, but love is not enough to feed my brothers. It is not enough to change your parents' minds." For a moment, neither spoke. The roar of the waterfall seemed louder, crueler than before. Finally, Daniel turned away, his fists clenched. "Perhaps you are right," he he said bitterly. Perhaps this was only a dream. Don't say that, she whispered. But he was already walking away, his figure swallowed by the mist. Elena fell to her knees by the water, tears mixing with the spray. That night a storm broke over the valley. The wind tore through the trees, the rain crashed down in sheets, and the river swelled with fury. Elena lay awake, her heart aching. She wanted to run to Daniel, to tell him she did not care about duty, that love was stronger. At the same time, Daniel sat in the dark of his guest room, staring out at the rain. His anger had cooled, replaced by a hollow pain. He thought of her eyes, of her trembling voice. He wanted nothing more than to hold her, to protect her, to stay. But the storm outside seemed to echo the storm inside his heart. Neither of them knew that this storm would change everything.
The storm raged through the night, wild and merciless. Trees bent under the wind, the river foamed with anger, and the waterfall roared louder than ever before. It was as if the whole valley was crying out in pain. Elena lay awake, listening to the thunder shake the earth. She could not rest. The words Daniel had spoken still cut through her heart. Perhaps this was only a dream. She pressed her hands to her face, tears mixing with the rain that slipped through the cracks of her window. She knew she loved him. She knew she could not let him leave thinking their love was nothing but a dream. "I must see him," she whispered into the darkness. "I must tell him before it's too late." Without waiting for morning, she wrapped herself in a cloak and ran into the storm. Daniel, too, could not sleep. The storm outside matched the storm inside his chest. He stared at the ceiling, replaying every word, every tear in Elena's eyes. Why did I speak in anger? Why didn't I just hold her, tell her I would fight for her? When the clock struck midnight, he could bear it no longer. He grabbed his coat and rushed out of the house, ignoring his parents' protests. The rain soaked him immediately, but he didn't care. His heart told him only one thing: go to the waterfall. She will be there. The path was dangerous in the storm. The rain turned the soil into mud, the rocks slippery underfoot. Branches snapped in the wind, and the swollen river crashed angrily beside the trail. Elena stumbled more than once, her cloak heavy with water, but she pressed on. Each step was a prayer. Please let me see him. Please let me not be too late. Daniel fought the same battle on the opposite side of the valley, his clothes plastered to his skin, his breath short. The waterfall's roar grew louder and louder, guiding him like a beacon. At last, both of them reached the clearing. Through the rain and mist, Elena saw a figure. For a heartbeat, she thought it was a dream, but then lightning lit the sky, and she saw his face. Daniel. "Daniel!" she cried, her voice breaking. "Daniel!" He shouted back, his words torn by the wind. He rushed to her, slipping on the wet rocks but refusing to stop. She ran toward him, and at last they collided in a desperate embrace. "I thought I lost you," he said, his voice trembling. "I was a fool. I didn't mean those words. I don't care about duty or what they say. I only care about you." For a moment, nothing else existed but the warmth of their embrace, even in the cold storm. The waterfall crashed behind them, eternal and wild, as if blessing their love. But fate is not always kind. As they pulled apart, a terrible sound split the air. A crack, deep and sharp. The ground beneath them shook. The heavy rain had loosened the rocks along the cliffs above. "Elena!" Daniel shouted, pulling her back. But it was too late. A mass of stone and earth broke free, crashing down toward the river. Elena stumbled, her foot slipping on the slick rock. She screamed as the ground gave way beneath her. "No!" Daniel lunged forward, grabbing her hand at the last second. For a moment, their fingers locked together, her eyes wide with terror, his filled with desperate strength. "I won't let go," he shouted, his voice raw. But the river was wild, the rocks merciless. His footing slipped, and with a cry, Elena was torn from his grasp. She fell into the furious water, swallowed instantly by the storm. "Elena!" His scream was lost in the roar of the falls. He jumped after her without thinking, throwing himself into the river. The cold struck him like knives, the current pulling him down, spinning him against stone. He fought, he reached, he searched for her in the black water, but the river was stronger. When he finally dragged himself to the bank, bruised and bleeding, she was gone. The storm raged on, but for Daniel, the world had fallen silent. He stumbled along the river's edge, calling her name until his voice broke. But there was no answer, only the endless roar of the waterfall. He collapsed to his knees, his heart tearing apart. The girl he had loved since childhood, the promise that had carried them through years of distance, the future he had dreamed of, all had been stolen in an instant. The rock where they had carved their initials stood nearby, shining wet in the storm. Daniel crawled to it, pressing his forehead against the faded letters, E+D. His sobs mixed with the rain. "I promised you," he whispered, his voice broken. "I will never forget, never." And above him, the waterfall roared on, eternal and uncaring, carrying her away forever. The storm passed with the coming of dawn, leaving the valley broken and heavy with silence. The river, swollen with anger during the night, now flowed slower, calmer, as if ashamed of what it had done. But Elena did not return with the morning light. For 3 days, Daniel searched. Villagers joined him, carrying lanterns, calling her name along the riverbanks, climbing rocks, looking beneath fallen trees. But the river gave nothing back. No voice, no body, no sign of the girl who had once danced along its stones. On the 4th day, the search ended. People shook their heads, whispered prayers, and told Daniel to go home. But he refused. He returned to the waterfall and sat by the carved rock, staring at the rushing water until the sun disappeared. He did not cry in front of the others, but when the night came and the valley was empty, he let his grief pour out. He shouted her name into the mist, begged the water to return her, cursed himself for letting go. His sobs blended with the endless roar, swallowed by the sound of the falls. Daniel returned to the city after the storm, but the city no longer felt like home. The noise, the lights, the endless movement, all of it seemed meaningless. His parents spoke of studies, of opportunities, of future plans, but he heard none of it. His heart remained in the valley, with the girl who had been his first friend, his first love, his promise. The years passed, but time did not heal him. Time only deepened the hollow inside. Every summer, on the date they had chosen as children, Daniel returned to the village. He walked the forest path alone, his steps slow, his face older. At the waterfall, he would stand before the rock where their initials were carved, E+D. The letters had grown faint, almost erased by rain and wind, but he traced them every year, his fingers remembering what the world wished to forget. Sometimes he spoke aloud, as if she were there,
sitting barefoot on the rocks again. "I kept my promise, Elena," he whispered one summer. "Another year. I wonder what you would look like now. More beautiful, I'm sure. And once, if there is another world after this one, wait for me by the water. I will come." His voice grew older, but his words remained the same. Villagers began to whisper about him. They called him the man of the waterfall. Children pointed at him, saying he was cursed. Some pitied him, others laughed, but Daniel did not care. The waterfall had taken Alina, and to the waterfall he would give the rest of his life. He never married. He never let another woman take Alina's place. His parents, at first angry, later tired, eventually accepted his silence. To them, he was a son who had lost his way. But to Daniel, he had found it. His path ended at the waterfall, and nowhere else. Years turned into decades. His hair turned gray, his steps slowed, but still he came. The villagers grew used to the sight of him, an old man sitting on a rock, staring at the rushing water, whispering to someone they could not see. On his last visit, his body weak, his hands trembling, Daniel sat by the rock one final time. The letters were almost gone, but he did not need them anymore. They lived inside him, carved deeper than stone could ever hold. He closed his eyes and listened. The roar of the waterfall filled his ears, just as it had on the day they made their promise, just as it had on the night he lost her. And in that sound, he thought he heard her laughter again, bright, wild, alive. A tear slipped down his cheek, but his lips curved into a faint smile. "I'm coming, Alina," he whispered. "The promise is kept." When the villagers found him the next morning, he was still sitting by the rock, his head bowed gently, as if he were only asleep. Behind him, the waterfall roared on, eternal and unchanging, carrying his soul to the girl who had always waited in its mist. And so the promise by the falls was never broken. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe for more English stories.